The Nintendo Switch has been around for almost half a decade now, a time that has absolutely flown by. In that time, the Japanese firm has released 3 new models and dozens of games, but now we have the options of the revised Switch, the Switch Lite, and the OLED model. Is it worth buying the original? Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas, and this is my review of the original Nintendo Switch in 2022. Just to clarify, I'm using the original HAC001. The revised model has a -1 on top of that and has a different processor and slightly different battery configuration. This older model is actually the runt of the litter and it has significantly worse battery life than that revised model. That said, it doesn't mean that it's not worth buying. The original Switch is built the same way as the second Switch. It's mostly plastic in design, which helps it feel solid in the hand. With the Joycon on, it doesn't feel quite as solid as, say, an iPad Pro, but I would say that the extra thickness it has on the iPad helps it feel less likely to bend in two. My unit has a slight sheen on the back plastic where it's been gripped, and that's something to pay attention to when buying used. This one is actually my partner's previous one. She's upgraded to the OLED and has got a skin on the back, which I think is probably quite a good idea. The Joycon slide on fairly loosely. They do stay there, they don't fall off, and that's in some reports of some sliding off of older models, so watch out for that if you're buying used. These sit on just fine, they're just not quite as tight as they once were. The 3.5mm headphone port is nice to have, and I've used it on occasion, although now, since a software update late last year, you can actually use Bluetooth earphones and headphones, which is mega handy. The functionality was there the whole time, they just didn't unlock it in software. The kickstand with the microSD card slot behind it is pretty flimsy and has come off a couple of times on my unit, though it has really been a simple case of snapping it back on. I've had no issues with the microSD card itself and I've found 128 gigs to be about right. It's worth mentioning I don't play my Switch religiously, I spend most of my gaming time on the PC, but I do have a fair few games on the SD card. I found the Switch dock to be pretty good. It holds the console in well, doesn't take up lots of room, and it definitely hasn't got looser over time. The lack of integrated LAN isn't a problem for me because I'm not playing competitive games and my Wi-Fi is good. You can get a separate dongle, though this is going to cost you extra, but this is present integrated into the Switch OLED model. I've used the USB power adapter more times than not to charge it instead of the dock, as I'm more of a handheld gamer when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. Though it must be said that the Switch dock is really handy to have even if you're only charging it, because it has those 2 extra USBs on there. The Joycon, well, they're pretty hit and miss for me. See, I don't have the biggest hands in the world, but I find the Joycon with their really small design to be quite fiddly, and actually they can hurt my right thumb. Especially if I'm using that right stick, it just isn't as comfortable as a bigger controller, and that's a given. They're not too bad when in this plastic thing that comes with the Switch. It's not so bad then because the controller feels a little bit wider. However, there is this, I'll put an image on the screen, which I would really like to try out. It's actually just a larger set of controllers that go on the Switch. You can get them in different colors and everything, and I think that would work way better. I haven't experienced the infamous Joycon drift, which I'm thankful for. My main issue has been one of ergonomics. My partner has the Switch Pro controller, namely the Splatoon 2 one, and by contrast to the Joycon, it's way better. Let's switch over to the screen now. It's a 6-inch 720p touchscreen, and it looks pretty good. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, the Switch OLED's 1080p OLED blows it out of the water. It's significantly better, it's also bigger and has thinner bezels. But that's not to say that this screen is throwaway though, it's definitely good enough for Nintendo games. I mean, any higher resolution, and it probably wouldn't be able to run outside of the dock. And the brightness and the size and the bezels, they're all absolutely acceptable on something like this. I didn't see a massive performance jump going from handheld to dock despite the resolution difference, and actually going between the two is incredibly smooth in its transition. Battery life is not the best, I must admit. On my first gen model, I am lucky to get 3 hours of game time out of it. I typically get about 100 minutes to 2 hours on a charge, and the charging isn't particularly fast. Thankfully though, you can use the USB-C port for battery banks and charge on the go, which I found particularly useful. Nintendo has expanded the Switch's game library over the past couple of years. We've had Animal Crossing New Horizons, Pikmin 3, Super Mario 3D World, and the new Pokemon remakes. Of course, I'm missing a lot out here, but those are the ones that I'm particularly interested in, with the Legends Arceus coming out very soon, if not it's out already by the time this video is up. So the library isn't quite as vast as you'd find on, say, the Xbox One or PlayStation 4, but I think there are enough games to really sink your teeth into. Not to mention the replayability of a lot of them. But, and there is a but, the prices for games on the Switch are absolutely extortionate. Now I get it, Nintendo products and games have always kind of carried a premium, but in an age where money is hard to get a hold of, wow, some of the used prices even surprised me. So I couldn't find Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on eBay for under £30, and the same goes for Breath of the Wild. These games are almost 5 years old and they're definitely not classic collector's items yet. They're good games, but are they really £30 used good games? For between £150 and £175, the original Nintendo Switch on the used market seems like a bit of a bargain. You do have to take into account the controllers, the games, and other accessories into the price because they do cost a lot more than your average. But is it worth buying? Well, I think so. If you only really want a handheld gaming device, maybe look at some of the sort of streaming devices that you can get, and also the controller attachments for your phones are pretty good. But if you're into Nintendo games, and you do have to be into Nintendo games, or at least a couple of them, I think this is a really good little sweet spot. It costs around the same as a Switch Lite, which isn't nearly as versatile as one of these. And to be fair, if you really wanted the OLED, it's only another £60 or £70 depending on where you buy it from. The OLED is significantly better than the original Switch, but I'm surprised to see how the Switch has held up in 2022. At almost 5 years old, this thing has been through hell and back, it's been used a lot, and well, it seems to be in pretty good condition. I have to be honest, the plastic design and the way this thing's built, although sturdy enough, I didn't think it would last 5 years, but it has, and it's done a really good job. And with that, I give the Nintendo Switch, the original version, my recommendation. If you can, I would recommend going for the revised version, just because the battery life is a good 20 to 30% better. And if you can really pony up the money for an OLED, wow, after experiencing it firsthand, it is really nice. But like I said, the original Switch is good enough. And with that, I'm going to end this video. Thank you all so much for watching, guys. Please do like, comment, and subscribe if you're new around here to never miss a video like this one. Check out all my social medias that will be linked in the description below, and check out my Patreon. Speaking of which, thank you so much to my patrons for being continually supportive. It really helps out the channel. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I'll catch you later. Peace.